What's up, Pod Pals? It is your buddy Adam, and you are checking out Podcasting Business School. This is the show where I teach podcasters how to love their podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. This is a podcast audit session. So if you're interested in some podcasting tips on podcast growth, podcast monetization, podcast audience engagement, we're talking all things podcasting here with my new pod pal, one of my favorite new people that I've crossed paths with here, Bernie Borges from the Midlife Fulfilled podcast. Bernie, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Thanks, Adam. It is great to be here. Long time listener. So first time being in the audit chair.
Yeah, well, the seat is about to get hot. Let's turn up the heat. No, we're all just friendly mojo here, my man, as you know. So we're talking about download growth, audience engagement, monetization. Where do you want to kick off the conversation here today, man?
Well, where most other podcasters want to focus, and that is audience growth, which to me is download growth. Same thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So who's the ideal listener for your show? Let's kick that idea out there
Okay.
and then kind of peel off from there.
Yep. So as you know, Adam, the podcast is called the Midlife Fulfilled Podcast. The short answer to your question on the ideal listener is any person, man or woman, over the age of 40. That's the short answer. Okay. Because usually people over 40 are willing to acknowledge that they're in some kind of a midlife season. So when I started doing my research on this podcast, which I think you know is my third podcast,
Right.
um, I first started, you don't know this part of the story, Adam. I first thought, I'm going to do a podcast about podcasting because I've been podcasting for 9 years. So I went out and did some research, and that's how I found you.
Oh, nice.
And once I started listening to you, I'm like, no, Adam's got this market cornered. So I don't think I can
awesome.
add any more value. Right. So I went back to the drawing board, and this whole midlife topic has been on my mind for quite a while. So I started doing research on midlife. Long story short, because I know we have limited time here. What I found was there are a lot of podcasts out there on midlife, but almost all of them are hosted by women for women. I found no podcasts talking about this fulfillment angle. And what led me to the fulfillment angle was that, I'm gainfully employed. So the podcast is a side hustle for me. I have a great job. I have a great marriage. I have a great family. I'm like really happy, right? I'm fulfilled, except I was no longer podcasting for myself. That little corner of my life was unfulfilled. And I got to thinking at, I'm like, I don't think I'm alone here. I think there's so many dimensions to our life that we all strive for fulfillment in these different dimensions of our life. So it's a longer answer to your question. The short answer again is people over the age of 40, but those who are willing to really think about, are they fulfilled in all the areas of their life? And the short answer is most people are not. And there's no
Right.
shame in that, by the way. It's perfectly normal. So my podcast is about featuring people on their stories. I call them BF to AF, a before fulfillment to after fulfillment story. And so far as of this recording today, I'm 10 episodes in, having a blast and sharing some really, really awesome stories.
Yeah, it's a great show, and I love your energy around it. And I love that you are on that hero's journey. You're that boots on the ground representative of the people that you're marketing to, and I think that's super cool. So, if you guys fit Bernie's ideal listener profile, go check out a show for sure. Now, let's talk about growing this audience and getting the right people in there. And really, there are three areas when we talk about podcast growth. We think about, all right, episode goes live. What are we doing to market it, especially like on social media? So that's one zone. Then we look at other people's podcasts, OPP. How do we leverage that? Are we doing, interview swaps? Are we doing promo intro swaps? You and I just recorded one of those recently. So you guys will be hearing Bernie's awesome podcast voice introing one of my episodes here soon. And then also the paid podcast player ad zone. So out of those three, what are we already doing? What's going well? Where do you have questions? Let's kind of analyze each of those three. So again, it is social media and marketing in general, having kind of that marketing roadmap, the podcast player swaps or the podcast interview swaps, and then paid ads. Where do you want to start?
Sure. So I'm doing a little bit of all of them. So the good news is I'm aware, and again, longtime listener. I meant what I said, longtime listener, and also I'm a longtime marketer. I mean, my vocation is content marketing, And I wrote a book on social media marketing way back in the ancient days of 2009. So I've been doing social media marketing for a while. But that said, Adam, full disclosure here, because that's the purpose of this audit, is that it's a new podcast, B, it's a side hustle for me. And I'm both unable and unwilling to work till midnight every night. I just can't do that. So I have limited ability or time to give it the amount of social media marketing that it deserves. So I'm promoting on Instagram. Once or twice a week, I'm going live. Usually I go live with the guest of that week. So we're
Good.
recording today on a Tuesday. In 3 hours, I'm going live with a guest from last week. Right. Thursday, I'm going live again with another guest. So I'm doing that. Each episode within the first 3 days,
Perfect.
I post a few times on Instagram. I tweet. I'm very active on Twitter. I have 30 plus thousand followers on Twitter, verified and all that. But even at that, with that said, I don't feel like it's a very engaged audience, even though it's 30,000. It just doesn't do a lot for me. Where I'm really handicapped is I'm very active with almost 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, but I'm really staying low profile there because I don't want to conflict with my day job.
Right.
So I'm encouraging people. So like if you come on my podcast and you want to post it on LinkedIn, I tell you like, hey, go for it. Great. But I'm not. Right. So that's kind of hindering me. I'm not super active on Clubhouse. I went to one of your sessions, but I haven't been super active there. I definitely do need to consider that. I'm starting the intro promo swaps, as you said. You and I are doing one with Janet Fish as well. And then also doing the guest podcasting to the extent that I can, within my availability. So I'm hitting some treetops on many of them, but I know there's room for improvement.
Well, I think we definitely need to be conscious of your time constraints. Like you don't have all the time in the world to do this because you've got a cranking full-time vocation going on that you've got to take care of business with literally. So I think for you, I would love to see you set some goals around those promo intro swaps for a few different reasons. One, it's a nice little ad on someone else's show. We can target those. So any podcaster that you run across that fits that 40 plus profile, especially their listeners are probably also in that 40 plus profile, and you're going to have a nice message for them. So like when you come to Pod Pals, you're hanging out in any of my stuff, or if I can just introduce you to people and facilitate that, we're all over it. You've got a great recognizable voice. So when you intro somebody's show, it's going to sound really good. They're going to be happy with it. Obviously, you know what you're doing with audio, and that's going to stand out, especially a female podcast. So I think for the podcast promo intro swap, if like all the stars align, you find a female podcaster because your voice is so much different. It's going to stand out when your audio pops. I would find somebody 40 plus, and then anybody that's just has a show that's in line with where you feel like your typical listener would be hanging out. Look for that because you can knock these out quick. Like it takes very little time. The networking is the thing that takes the most time. But honestly, I'm going to really start pushing these at Pod Pals. And I know you show up to Pod Pals. So I think we may even add a little bonus segment to that where you go, who's the ideal podcast promo swap for me? And then you should just collect 4 or 5 of them right there. And I think, if you were to do at least 4 of those a month, I mean, 1 a week on average, it's going to take you a minute or less to actually record the audio. It's just the networking aspect of it. I think
Yeah.
for you,
So
I would say let's do 50 of those a year,
I agree. So question for you. I just picked up my first sponsor. Their budget only allows 2 episodes per month, and I'm publishing weekly. So would you, knowing that if I've got a sponsor message that I'm going to do before I begin the interview, so I begin with an excerpt from the interview, then I get into my pre-recorded intro, and then I have a custom intro that I did for that episode, which includes the sponsor message. And the sponsor message is not pre-recorded. I actually do it in real time.
Yep.
So on the promo swaps, I'm thinking that I wouldn't do the promo swaps on the episodes that I have the sponsor message, that I would do the promo swaps on the episodes I don't have a sponsor message.
Yeah, that would make sense. And that way you're not ruffling any feathers with the
Right.
sponsor as to when the audio actually takes place. But I mean, you could also, I mean, to me, anytime there's a curveball thrown at my audience that will make them pump their brakes and listen. So I've asked people, I'm like, when I started doing these intro things, are you listening to my intro now? And they're like, yeah, I do. Because all of a sudden there's a female voice. I'm like, what is this? What's happening? Who is this? So it actually could be to your sponsor's advantage, where if you, especially if you have a female voice introducing your show, then it goes into like, I would make that the very first thing. Because if
Yeah.
people do get into skip mode, they're going to hear that different voice all of a sudden, and then they'll probably listen because like Bernie's got something up his sleeve here. I better listen to all this stuff. And the fact that you record it in flow, it's not canned, I think that helps a lot too. So, I mean, I wouldn't be upset about it if I was paying to sponsor your show, because I would see it as a pattern disrupt, which may make more people actually listen. So, but if you only have a certain amount that you could do them every other week, then that's a it's kind of like low hanging fruit, no
Yeah.
brainer idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to
So
play with that. And then back to your promo swap example or idea, rather. What about? I mentioned in my research, I found many podcasts that are hosted by women for women in midlife. So, do you view them as competitive or cooperative, meaning friendly competition that I should still do promo in swaps with?
I would definitely do promo swaps with them, and I would reach out to do interview swaps with those types of people. Like, have you connected with Gail and Christina from Midlife Moxie yet?
No.
I will make that introduction. I'm ashamed that I have not done that yet for you. Like that is a no-brainer. They've got a great show. It's growing fast. You'd be a great guest for them. They'd be a great guest for you. They're very entertaining. So
Cool.
that I will make a note of that. But yeah, like I think that you add that male flavor. Like you said, you're kind of the outlier in this space. So if anybody wants to collaborate with you, I feel like you're going to come out better off than the average female podcaster. There's a lot more competition in there. So I know that guys listen to Midlife Moxie, and it's two female hosts, and they may be looking for a guy's perspective, and you can help
Yeah.
fill that too. And I don't think it's a situation where they're like, I'm trading in Gail and Christina for Bernie or vice versa. Like, you know how it is. Like if you're interested in a topic, like I'm really interested in like investing and financial independence. I'm not like, oh, I can only listen to one show. Who's it going to be? Like I listen to
Sure.
all the shows on these topics. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a full, like, that's how podcast consumers are. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. And like, I would, like I said, if I was you, I would set a goal for 50 per year swaps on average, maybe 12 interviews, like really good right fit interviews. I feel like that's one a month on average, going on someone else's show that's a really good fit. Those are the types of numbers that I would set if I was you, but obviously you know your schedule and time constraints better. But I think having some sort of a goal in those two categories that you're tracking and actively like putting a little positive heat on yourself, like, oh, I haven't done my guest spot for the month yet. I need to go find somebody. So that's when you would hop into Clubhouse or hop onto Pod Pals or just
Right.
run an email by me and be like, I haven't done my swaps this month. Who do you got? Who's in the midlife space? But being if you are on Clubhouse is a slippery slope, as you and I both know. But the room that I talk in with Gail and Christina on Thursdays is the Hey Girl You Can Club. And I tell you what, there's probably at least a dozen podcasters in there with midlife based shows, and they're 100% female. So I
Hmm.
think you hanging out in that room with me facilitating, I can facilitate. We like every other Thursday, we do a room called Find a Guest or Be a Guest. So this would be low hanging fruit, easy, no, I think you'd stand out with your message. If you're going to spend some time on Clubhouse, that's where I'd have you hang out, not like the
Okay.
fans of Spider-Man room or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that makes sense. Because honestly, I've been searching on Clubhouse and really haven't found much. So thanks for putting that on my radar, because you're fast tracking it for me,
Yeah.
because I've been striking out.
Yeah. Well, you think midlife, yes, checks that box. You'll stand out both with your message and your voice, that connects. And I'm there to facilitate it. And when my people, like those of you that show up on Clubhouse and listen to me chatter away on there, you can tell when one of my people is out there because I'm pulling them up, I'm promoting them, I'm like shining
Yeah.
the extra light of love upon my pod pals that I've interacted with, and because I mean that's you guys deserve that. So I think those go down every other Thursday at 2 Eastern. So we could experiment with that. We could pull you up on stage and that way I can make a direct connection with Gail and Christina because they co-host that room. It's their room. I'm actually their co-host.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um,
Cool. Cool.
so
Like
I
it.
think that would be time well spent. What are you doing with podcast player ads? Have you dove into the waters of like Overcast and things like that yet?
I haven't. I haven't. I've heard you many times on other audits recommend Overcast. Overcast is actually the player that I use to listen, so I see the ads all the time. And I've heard your tips about finding niche topics to try to find a good price point, but I haven't explored that yet. It's on my radar. I just haven't taken the action yet. The
Yeah.
other thing that I'm going to confess here, Adam, publicly to your entire audience that I've downloaded your promo worksheet. And again, because of limited time, I haven't really done anything with the actual worksheet. Now, that said, I've got other planning process things that are in place, like a calendar. I've got columns in there for things like my sponsor and my promo swap. So I've got processes that are set up, but
You're
I'm
organized.
also doing all my own editing. And you know what that's like. I don't know
Yeah,
if you still do your own editing or
I
not,
do.
but I am. So, that eats up some time. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that like eventually you'll, dive into the ads a little bit. That'll help quite a bit. Like, and even with you thinking about those off topic categories that your audience may be listening to, like sports, I think you could do really well on sports. I've been getting really cheap, like $200 ad runs inside of Overcast in the sports category, and you'll pick up 40 or 50 podcast subscribers, and that's awesome. Like we're paying, $4 or $5 a new subscriber. But I think a lot of midlife men, especially, are listening to sports podcasts. So I think news would be another one that I think you could do very well with, and those kind of go up and down on Overcast. You got to, kind of stay on top of the ball with that. But I would look at that. Now, I know you've also been kicking around the idea of kind of your own, what I call a community engagement lead magnet, which is what my Pod Pal Zoom parties are. Where are you at with that thought process? Because I think that once we're bringing new people in, activating them and getting them some Bernie time, and like getting them, I kind of view Pod Pals as like the warming plate or the warming center on an oven. Like it keeps your audience hot and it keeps them activated and it creates super fans. So I know you've kicked around some ideas on that. Where are you at with that process?
so I have a lead magnet that's a work in progress. And it's based on some research that I did before I launched the podcast, which ultimately led to the topic and the name of the podcast, Midlife Fulfilled. And in this research, I asked 7 questions and I uncovered a gold mine of information. And so I actually shared some of the research that I did results on episode 2. But a few people have asked, like, "Hey, do you have that available as like a PDF?" So I've been working on putting that together. I'm not done yet. I wanted to look. I don't need it to be perfect and all that, but I want it to be good.
Yeah.
But it's not there yet. And then it's a matter of promoting it and offering it as a download. I do have a weekly. I don't know if I can call it a newsletter, Adam, but once a week on Monday afternoon. I publish on Monday morning at 5 a.m. Monday afternoon, an email goes out with that episode to a small group of people that are currently subscribed. So I'm trying to build up the subscribers on my email list as well. But the lead magnet is definitely in the works and probably still a few weeks away.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, man, like I definitely think we got to come up with your version of Pod Pals. Like what's that
Yeah,
monthly jam session where, especially like you're a community builder with your show. Let's give that community a chance to be a community and let's give them something cool to look forward to. And maybe you have a speaker come on and just teach on a midlife topic, or there's some sort of cool, just almost like group therapy session or idea sharing, or like what's working for you. Here's my,
yeah,
BF to AF,
yeah,
situation. What's yours look like? And just let them be a part of the show and coming up with a cool way to do that. I think that your audience would really dig that, and it's a great way to build your list full of super fans. So I'll keep encouraging you to kind of
I agree. I agree.
brainstorm on
Again,
that.
I've seen you do it with your own Zoom Pod Pal. I've heard you, recommend it to others, and of course, that I've been kind of kicking that idea around. The thing I have to just kind of deal with, Adam, is just time. I mean, I've already turned down one request to come in and do some paid coaching inside of a business, and I said I can't. I have a full time job.
Yeah,
So I have to just, be very wise about, what I'm going to commit to.
yeah, and with a group session like that too, that would replace interview time or solo episode time. So that could just fold into your content mix a little bit too, and go, okay, I'm going to take out one interview session. I'm going to bring
Yeah.
10 listeners on instead and do 45 minutes with them, or half an, or you could even break that down. It's always nice to have that cache of, audio content as well, just in case you want to take a month off of doing interviews or something like that. So I
Yep.
think, it's worth kicking around that idea, but they do work well because it's going to build your list. It's going to create super fans. It really ramps up engagement. We know that engagement super fans means more downloads because they're going out, they're listening to everything, but then they're also going to go out there and tell their friends about it. And in the midlife space, I feel like that's still where a lot of, we're talking 40+ year old people, a lot of them are finding podcasts via recommendations of their friends
Yep.
still,
Yep.
so I think creating something there where I could see you doing one of these. Maybe you have 10 people or 15 people on there. Everybody has a good time. Hey, if you enjoyed this, go tell somebody you know about it. That's your one way that's how you pay your admission. Go
Yep.
and send the latest episode to somebody on your phone in the next 24 hours or something like that, putting out a little challenge. And then maybe you have some sort of giveaway based off of that. Make it fun, make it a little contest or something like that. But I think, yeah, like if we can find the time for this by squeezing in it in place of an interview, I think it's going to pay off in a lot of ways. So
Yep.
just something to consider.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
agree. I agree.
I think so. Like walk away action steps here. I think the promo swaps and interview swaps, that's what's going to grow Midlife Fulfilled more than anything right now. And it's not going to take a ton of time. So I think setting some goals around what kind of numbers you want to hit there, add those to your systems and processes. Like if you do a monthly preview/review, let's get some goals on those and just start chasing those numbers a little bit. And I think that the Bernie magic will spread. Sound good?
I agree. I agree, Adam. Yeah. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Again, longtime listener, been absorbing your content. Hey, you're the reason I didn't launch a podcast about podcasting, and I'm here on Midlife Fulfilled.
Oh, that's hilarious. I did not know that, man. Well, let's make sure that you get to shout out your brand, your website, all the places that you hang out on social media. So let's dive into the world of Bernie here real quick.
All right, cool. So I'm at Bernie Borges, Borges, pretty much everywhere on the socials. Midlifefulfill.com exists, but it's a landing page at this moment in time when we record this. Probably the easiest ways, if you're familiar with the link tree URL structure, just add Midlife Fulfilled at the end of that. It's just Google Linktree and then Midlife Fulfilled, and you'll find that Linktree link, and pretty much everything is there.
Nice. All right, Bernie, I appreciate you. I'm a fan of what you're doing. I think you're a good dude. You're one of my pod pals, and I'm excited to make a few connections and let's see if we can get this show growing.
Thank you, Adam. Back at you, my friend.
All right, everybody. If you want to sign up for a podcast audit just like the world famous Bernie Borges, then go over to the website, podcastingbusiness.school. Get signed up. There is a wait list building, pod pals. Get in so you don't have to wait as long as the next person, and we'll have you on the show. And with that, as always, I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.